Hey guys, Chris from Provo Beast Audio Installation, and today we're doing a 5-channel amplifier on this 2018 Toyota 4Runner. In this install, we're going to go ahead and show you how to install the amplifier underneath the passenger front seat, run all the wiring, and integrate with the factory radio. Now just keep in mind that this model, 4Runner, even though it's the limited model, it does not come with the factory amplifier, the factory JBL system. Let's go ahead and get started. This video is sponsored by HighFlex.com, your go-to place for great fitting shorts that are comfortable and don't suck. Pick yourself up a pair of Stretch Flex Hero shorts and get 15% off at checkout with coupon code ProvoBeast. Now here's our factory radio. We're not replacing this radio for this install. If you already have an aftermarket radio, you're already one step ahead because your aftermarket radio will have RCA pre-outs for your amplifier. Because factory radios really never do, what we're going to have to do is integrate into this factory radio, provide a line-out converter to convert a signal that our amplifier can read. Now additionally, if you have an amplifier that has a high-level input or a speaker-level input, you won't need a line-out converter. Or if you're running a digital processor, you won't need a line-out converter as well, just because you're able to make those adjustments to the signal for your amplifier through that software. In this install, we're just using a NVX line-out converter, and we're going to show you how we're going to integrate using a T-harness into the factory radio, basically rob that signal so that we can have signal for our amplifier. Now, as we prepare for our install, the best place that we have determined to put the amplifier is underneath this passenger front seat. There's 4 bolts you'll need to remove on each corner. You don't necessarily have to disconnect it. We can just lift it up, lean it up to give us plenty of space to go ahead and fit our amplifier up underneath the seat. And that's where we're going to run our signal cable from our radio and our power and ground from the battery, as well as our speaker wire that will go to all our speakers. got our back all put back together. We're gonna get a piece of ABS plastic so we can actually match that same shape, and then we'll cut it and cut a hole in that shape and put a speaker grill, just so this isn't entirely exposed and we can give a little bit more protection to the sub. But as for now, the back's all put back together. This is the pocket that we'll no longer use, obviously, because the sub is in its place. But everything else is done here in the trunk area. There it is, sub all installed. I made a custom grill cover out of some ABS plastic, put some sound deadening on the back. I picked up an 8-inch grill, cut the hole and matched it perfectly to that size to fill in that gap there. Got that all mounted, so it looks nice, protects the sub, and there's no rattles. Okay, so in order for us to get power to our amplifier that we're going to be installing under the passenger front seat, we're going to go ahead and run a power wire from our positive post on our battery through an inline fuse all the way to the positive input on the amplifier. To do that, we're going to go ahead, we have some bulk wire, but you can pick up an amplifier wiring kit. We'll put an inline fuse, nice flat spot here on the side. Now there's a black little grommet that we actually popped out that wasn't being used. Okay, so we button up our wiring here. So that's the factory grommet. We just cut out the middle just so our wire could go through it and it maintains a seal. And we ran that wire, got it all zip tied. Put our inline fuse just right here. It'll clear the actuator for the hood just fine. But we put that right there so it's nice and serviceable. And then this run is going to go onto that stud once we're all ready to go and get this powered up. Now up underneath the dash here, you can see where that came out. We just used the razor blade to cut a little slit in the firewall dampening just so it's could easily pass through this material here. We pulled it down and we actually popped off the side panel here, just 2 clips, and the whole piece comes out. That allows us a little access underneath center console, but over the transmission tunnel to the other side. We got all our carpet put back, and that's where you see the wire come down. Right underneath the carpet, that's all you're gonna see because this panel will go right back up into that place. Here on the other side, we took the same side panel off, again 2 clips, and it just pulls on out, pull the carpet back, and there we are. So what we're gonna do with this power wire is we're gonna run it up underneath these kick panels. This is held on with clips, this just screws on off. And then this kick panel is also just held on with clips. Just get up on the side and pop it off all the way down. And then we got to vacuum up a little bit here underneath the seat, but essentially we've decided that this is a good little spot for our 5-channel amplifier. We're going with this new 5-channel from NVX. If you like this amplifier, we'll throw a link in the description. With our seat back, we started running our cable. Now we got power and ground. So our power, obviously you saw that run all the way from the battery. Just snake it up underneath the carpet so it looks all nice. I mean, you get plenty of access there. And then for the ground here, we have a nice threaded bolt location. Now we are relying on the spot welds. If you don't like that type of ground, or if you're running a lot more current than we are, I'd suggest just putting a bolt into the frame of the 4Runner or into the body here rather than relying on those spot welds, but that's up to you. We cleaned the paint off really well and then put a bolt in there. Now we're using copper wiring, so it makes this connection really nice, and that'll just fit up underneath there. We have our sub wiring. Again, we ran that all the way from the back just up underneath, and it came out here, so that'll plug into the amplifier. At this point, we need signal and speaker output. So we are going to start taking apart our dash here, and we're going to show you a trick that we use using a T-harness, so we don't have to cut into the factory wiring of the radio. Rather, we built a T-harness to rob the signal and allow us to tap back into that wiring to run power to the speakers. We'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. Provo Beast Audio Installation Channel is sponsored by NVX and Sonic Electronics. Get 10% off all speakers, amplifiers, wiring kits, and more with coupon code PBAI at NVX. Also get 5% off all car audio components at Sonic Electronics with coupon code Provo Beast. Alright, so what we've done here to help us integrate to the factory radio without cutting into the factory wiring, so we have picked up a T-harness. Now the harness that we use is the Toyota plug-and-play harness. It's actually for DSP, but we're not using the DSP portion of it. We're just using the T-harness side because these are super useful to allow us to integrate without really cutting into any factory wiring. Now this one specifically for this car that we used is the AX DSP-TY2. This is the speaker output, so we're going to use these speaker wires. So on this we have green and purple, then white and gray. Those are your aftermarket colors. What this does is taking those signals, and we have rerouted those through the T-harness down into our line-out converter by NVX. So in this line-out converter, we have from the harness here, output of our radio. It's going to go into this harness, which plugs into our line-out converter, and it's going to convert it to a low-level signal for us. From the RCAs, we're going to send that signal to the amplifier. And then from the amplifier, here's our speaker output from the amplifier. This is called 9-wire, 9-conductor cable. That's our output. That's going to go back in this cable all the way back up to the dash. And on this end, we have this little plug, which allows us to plug back into our factory wiring. So this end plugs into the back of the radio, and it's going to supply the signal through the T-harness that we've created. It's going to go down this. The signal, which is the front and the rear, left and right speaker wires, will go into our line-out converter, which converts it into an RCA output. We'll use RCAs to go to the amplifier. And then from the amplifier, once it amplifies the signal, this is going to be our speaker output wire. It has all our colors in this. Again, 9-conductor cable. It's going to run all the way back up into the dash, as you can see here, as it comes on in. And it's going to plug right back into the main wiring harness. Remember, this plugs into the car. So we're robbing the signal from the radio, amplifying it through the line-out converter amplifier, running it back into the factory harness, which goes to all our speakers. So this allows us to retain all our other factory functions except for the sound portion, where we're rerouting that through the amplifier, then bringing it back up and plugging it back into the rest of the car. So we need to prepare to pull the radio out just temporarily, allowing us to install our T-harness behind the radio. So the first thing we need to do is get access to it. Let's get a little tug like that. They're all just held on with clips. Same thing with the other side. Just got to get a good grip on it, and they just pop on out. All right, all clips. All right, so we got our sides off. Now this bottom panel, if you get a hold of the sides, the HVAC controls kind of give a little tug. There's some clips there. You got 4 clips here on the back, and you can just set that down. That'll expose 1, 2, 3, 4 10mm bolts. Go and remove those. I just did. And just grab the bottom here. Just kind of give a little tug on both sides. What that's going to do is allow you to pull out the factory radio. Now we don't need to disconnect a lot because we're using the T-harness, but the 2 harnesses that we're going to disconnect, we're going to show you what that looks like in here in just a second. Now here in the back of the radio, the 2 harnesses that we're going to want to disconnect are these 2. And we've done that, and what I did is that T-harness that I plugged in to the radio. The other end of that T-harness, so these were the plugs that were actually in the factory radio. We unplugged those and then plugged them into my harness. So this is the output of the radio, or now the output of our amplifier, which will go to all our speakers in the car. So now with that T-harness in place, with my ends plugged into the back of the radio and the factory ends plugged into my T-harness, we can now tuck this back in there. At this point, everything's going to run down and connect down here in the center console. So we ran that T-harness cable, the one that plugs into our line-out converter, down below. And as you can see here, we got that mounted. That plugs right in there. And then our line-out converter will go to our amplifier. So we started running our RCAs. Now this center console is just held on with clips on all corners. It just pops on up, super easy to get out. But I've already started running our RCAs. We're going to run it underneath the carpet to the input of our amplifier. Now the other end of the RCAs will plug into these. So remember, the D harness is pulling the signal from the radio, the audio signal. It's routing it to our line out converter, and then our line out converter to our RCAs. RCAs go through to the amplifier. Amplifier will amplify that signal. We still got to run our speaker wire, but that'll come back up in and plug back into our T-harness. Alright, so we're at the stage of the install. We're starting to hook up our amplifier here. Now we have the NVX 5-channel amplifier. We've got our ground hooked up to the ground. We've got our power from the battery. We have our sub speaker wire. Goes all the way back to the sub. And our output from our 4 channels here will go into the 9 conductor cable, and this will go back up to our T-harness, which essentially connects into the main harness of the car, which goes to all the other speakers in the vehicle. So we got all those hooked up. Now what we did is from the other, from just a minute ago, you saw us run those RCAs. We tucked them up underneath here, up underneath the carpet. We ran them up and along, out here, back up underneath, and right here. And these will plug into the input side of our amplifier. So we're just about ready here. We're going to swing this here, get it kind of positioned. Now the carpet's thick enough where we're actually just going to mount this to the carpet. If your carpet's not thick enough, or you're still worried about it moving around, especially if you're going off-road, you can slide a piece of MDF up underneath the carpet so you can mount the amp to. The carpet's thick enough for us that that's all we're concerned about. But we'll get the amp mounted, get everything hooked up, get everything buttoned up back with the radio here, get our line out converter all hooked up. We're going to have that here in the center console. And at this point, we're just about ready to boot up the amp for the first time. We're going to head up underneath the hood and get the positive hooked up to the battery because our connections have been made. Okay, so we got everything all buttoned up. We put the positive wire on the positive post of our battery. Everything's all secured underneath the seat, so let's go ahead and shut the hood. Alright, so we got the amplifier hooked up. Speaker wire output goes up to the D harness into the car main wiring harness, which goes to all the doors. That's all hooked up. Power, ground, remote turn on wire. On this end, we've got our RCAs and our bass knob. Remember, the RCAs connect to the line out converter, which we have there in the center console. We do have our crossovers here in the center console. We'll get those all mounted. That is about it there. So what we're gonna do is start buttoning all these panels back up. We got it playing here. Sounds great. We're just testing all the speakers, making sure polarity is right. We're going to be replacing the speakers on this 4Runner as well, so check the description. We'll have links to those videos once they become available. That's about it. Thanks guys for watching the channel. Appreciate the support. If you have any questions about what we did here, post a comment below. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you in the next video.